Okay, so today we have some slides. Actually, let me even make it full screen. It's a small contemplation. Our contemplation today is really about this one verse. This verse was read on Tuesday in the Gospel of Tuesday, as well as on Wednesday. So you see the theme actually repeating on 2 consecutive days this week. So I just wanted to go over it a little bit. And it's talking about the treasure, our treasure. So this verse is from Luke. It says, "Sell what you have and give alms. Provide yourselves money bags which do not grow old, a treasure in the heavens that does not fail, where no thief approaches nor moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And that's basically the verse that we want to reflect on a little bit today. In fact, if you look, this verse also is in the Sermon on the Mountain. You find it in Matthew 6, pretty much the same. "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Okay, so I was thinking a little bit, what are the different types of treasures that we sometimes go after? There are many treasures in this world that sometimes attract us. So some of them are these things. These are called the possessions, whether it being money, jewelry, cars, houses. These are possessions, these materialistic type of things. And we're all attracted to this type of treasure. Another one, sometimes people are attracted to knowledge, and this is where they find themselves. They think that the meaning of life is to really know, is to acquire knowledge. And for example, if you look at someone like Saint Augustine, at the beginning of his life, that's what he was seeking. He's seeking knowledge. He wants to know the truth. Another type of treasure that people seek is professions, successful careers and things like that. Another one is the self. It's a big treasure that many of us are focused on. So sometimes you find that our treasure is ourselves. So the person could end up feeling that he is the center of the universe and everything happening in the world is essentially to serve the self. Another one, I mean, there are different types of treasure, but another one is relationships. People sometimes are consumed about relationships, and this is the treasure that they have. So why do we seek different types of treasures? Why do we choose a particular type of treasure in our lives? The reason is that sometimes we want to be happy. We feel that this treasure is going to bring us joy. Everybody wants to be happy. None of us wants to be a sad person. So when we go after certain things, the reason is that I want to be happy. I want to be joyful. Another thing is that we all have thirst. عطشانين يعني. There's always a void inside of us and we try to quench that thirst. And when we look after a certain treasure, essentially we're trying to quench that thirst that we have within us. Another reason is stability. I want stability in my life. For example, if somebody is seeking possessions and money and big bank accounts and things like that, they feel that this is going to give them stability. For example, when the economy goes down, I'm going to have something to rely upon. I'm going to have insurance, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that, so I can rely on my money, for example. So stability is one of the things that we all seek. Another thing is peace. Sometimes I want peace. So for example, relationships. I find, for example, peace in a particular relationship or something like that. So these are all things that we seek. Another thing could be even the meaning of life. I'm trying to find a meaning for my life. Why am I living? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing that? So for example, you look at scientists, the meaning of life for them is I have to spend my life trying to discover the truth and find knowledge and so on. So these are all different things that drive us to choose a particular treasure or to cherish certain things or to care for certain things. So when we look at any treasure, you will see that there's always a motivation inside the heart. That's the zeal that we have inside of our heart. And that's what we read in this verse. It says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So essentially what this verse means is that the things that I value the most, the things that I cherish the most, this is my treasure. This is where my heart is going to be. What I care for lovingly, the things that I hold dear to me, the things that I treasure the most, And that's what the verse is saying. And regardless of the type of treasure that the person is seeking, there is always a quest for the treasure, meaning I'm going after that treasure, I'm putting effort, I'm putting struggles to be able to acquire that treasure. And of course, that effort could be on the level of the body, on the level of the mind, on the level of the heart as well. So body, for example, if somebody wants a particular profession, they spend hours and hours studying and working to be able to reach a particular goal. The mind is always occupied by these things and thinking about them. The heart is busy with emotions and feelings toward that treasure, as we said in the verse before that. The other thing that we have to remember is that when a person is on a journey for a treasure, they try to dig deep to be able to find the treasure. What do I mean by this? I mean, imagine that somebody is looking for gold or some precious treasures or gems or something like that. These things are never lying on the surface. They are lying in the depth of the earth. So if somebody wants to find such a treasure, they usually leave the surface and go deeper. The same thing happens with our spiritual life. So if my treasure is God, and of course, you know that this is the treasure that we want to talk about, my relationship with God, I have to also dig deep to be able to do something, to acquire that treasure. Look at, for example, when Christ came to Simon and he told him, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. يعني ادخلوا إلى العمق. يعني if you remember in that part, Christ was talking with Simon and he told him, يعني يا معلم تعبنا الليل كله ولم نأخذ شيء. When Christ told him to throw their nets, he told him, يعني على كلمتك ألقي الشبكة. I'm going to do that just because you said this. So this word, يعني ادخل إلى العمق, يعني go deep, digging deep to be able to build. I mean, in our minds or in this context that we're talking about, it means that to be able to build a relationship or acquire that treasure, which is a relationship with God, we need to dig deep in our relationship with Him. Look at this verse, I mean, which confirms that meaning from Philippians. Not that I have already attained or I'm already perfected, but I press on. I keep pressing on, that I may lay hold of that for which Christ Jesus has also laid hold of me. Brethren, I do not count myself to have apprehended, but one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forward to those things which are ahead. I press toward the goal for the prize of the upward call of God in Jesus Christ. So St. Paul is saying that no matter where I am spiritually, I should desire to go deeper in my relationship with God. I should press on. Of course, since God is infinite, we can always know Him even more deeply, and we can go deeper in our relationship with God, and this is how we end up finding that treasure. Look also this meaning in Ephesians, where it says, St. Paul says, to me, who am less than the least of all the saints, this grace was given, that I should preach among the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ. Meaning, look at this part, the unsearchable riches of Christ. يعني اللي هي بالعربي يعني غنى المسيح الذي لا يستقصى. يعني the depth of the richness of Christ is something that is unsearchable, something that يعني it's infinite. So if a person wants to dig deep, and by the way, this digging deep applies even to the other treasures that we talked about. If a person is going after a profession or after relationships or after anything, the person has to go deeper into these things to be able to acquire the treasure. And that's what people do, even knowledge, whatever that treasure is. So that applies even to the other treasures that people seek. But of course, what matters to us is that spiritual treasure, and we'll say in a moment why. So these are some examples that I thought about when thinking about different types of treasures. And of course, I don't mean to say that anybody is bad or anything like this, but I'm just looking at different types of people and what they were seeking. This week, we were celebrating the feast of Saint Abba Noffer, the Anchorite, اللي هو يعني الأنبا نوفر السائح. And I know a lot of us love Abba Noffer. His feast was on Tuesday. He's a person who went after that treasure, that God treasure, going after God and a relationship with God, and he left everything. He went and lived all by himself. And of course, that's not the only path that leads to God, but that's what he did. This other person that you see, his name is Claude Shannon. He's a famous scientist. He's the father of what is known as information theory. I mean, because of him, we have cell phones today. So he's a scientist. I mean, he's very well-known scientist who has given it all for science. This is an actress. Her name is Elizabeth Taylor. She was known to have very precious jewelry and things like that. So that was her treasure. Shamshun, what his treasure was at some point in his life was his lust. He was going after his lusts. Of course, at the end of his life, we know that he prayed and God listened to him and gave him strength. But then you see that verse from Hebrews, which says, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. So it's up to us to go after whatever treasure that we want. But at the end, the thing that can help us is to look at the outcome of the way of life of different people and the different treasures that they went after. And again, I don't mean to say that anybody of these people is bad or anything like this, but I'm just pointing to different types of treasures that people sought in their life. And that's the matter of, this is just a fact of what things are. So let's look at having God as our treasure. We said before that when I try to seek a particular treasure, it's because I want to be happy, it's because I'm trying to fill a certain void or quench my thirst or find stability or peace or whatever. So let's see what happens when a person takes God as his treasure. Look at, for example, this verse from Luke, which we just read. Provide yourselves bags which wax not old, a treasure in the heavens that fails not, where no thief approaches, neither moth corrupts. So it's a treasure that will be there forever. Nobody is going to be able to take it from us. Even if the world ends, that treasure is going to stay. So that tells you about the amount of stability that exists in that treasure. The other types of treasures, for example, possessions and these kinds of things, they wear out. They do not last for too long, especially the possessions. Even knowledge, even the people who had knowledge, even if they were able to write their name in history, for example, but at the end, they leave the world without this knowledge. There's a story about, in fact, Albert Einstein. After he died, they said, we want to dissect his brain and try to see if there was something different about his brain from anybody else, because he was very smart and intelligent, had a very high IQ. So they said after they looked at his brain and did whatever type of imaging and these kinds of things that they did, and they just found a normal brain. Of course, he's very smart and nobody can deny this. But at the end, the knowledge that he went after is something that stayed with humanity. He has served humanity. But for himself, what matters for the person at the end is his relationship with God. What kind of relationship a person had with God. And I don't know about his relationship with God or the relationship of anybody else. But I'm just saying that the stability comes from that relationship with God. This notion of stability, we see it also in Hebrews. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. المسيح هو أمس واليوم وإلى الأبد. He is always there. Wherever you go meet with him, you will find him as he is. He does not change. Stability. If a person is seeking to quench their thirst, look at John 4, the story of the Samaritan woman. Christ is telling her, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. من يشرب من هذا الماء يعطش أيضا. ماء ده يعني أي حاجة تانية. يعني من يشرب من هذا الماء يعطش أيضا، ولكن يعني اللي يشرب المية بقى اللي ربنا بيديها يعني لا يعطش إلى الأبد. No thirst. A meaning of life. If a person is finding a meaning of life, why are we living? I mean, that's something that's driving the world crazy. And people try to find a meaning for their lives. In Romans, St. Paul says, for whether we live to the Lord. And whether we die to the Lord. Whether we live, therefore, or die, we are the Lord's. يعني معنى الحياة هو أن أنا في المسيح. That I am in the Lord. Whether I live or whether I die, that's the meaning of life. I am in Christ and Christ is in me. That's the meaning of life. Happiness, if somebody is seeking happiness, for God gives to a man that is good in his sight wisdom and knowledge and joy. That inner joy that nobody can speak of يعني, is only coming from having God as our treasure. So everything that we're seeking in a treasure exists in that relationship that we have with God. So just final few words about that treasure. If we want more on that dedication aspect that we talked about, if a person is going after a treasure, and especially that treasure that we talked about, which is acquiring God, we have to go against our defects and weaknesses. We have lots of weaknesses. We have to be able to go against these things because they are going to slow us down. We have to go against lusts and desires. يعني كل ما في العالم شهوة الجسد وشهوة العين وتعظم المعيشة. We have to go against these things. يعني تعظم المعيشة, our pride, our dignity, and the pride of our thoughts, the haughtiness of our hearts and souls. These are the things that stop us from acquiring that treasure. We will have to go against these things. Worries and cares of the world, and these are يعني without number. We have lots of worries and cares. Look at the story of Mary and Martha. يعني Mary, she devoted her time to the Lord. She sat at his feet listening to his commandments and listening to his talking. And as she did this, Christ has said that she has chosen the good share, right? So she went after that treasure that cannot be taken from her. So in Corinthians, it says that those who live might live no longer for themselves, but for him who for their sake died and was raised. So the reflection that we're talking about today is, where am I from this? What kind of treasure am I seeking? And where is my treasure? And if I want to know where my treasure is, Christ is telling us, go look at your heart. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What are the things that I value the most and cherish the most? What are the things that I cannot give up? What are the things that I care for lovingly, as we said, or hold dear? This is how I know where my treasure is. And if in my life I sought after other treasures, then one thing we can also reflect on today is to ask ourselves that question: have these things given me what I was seeking? We talked about the different things that I'm seeking, whether it's joy or stability or whatnot. So, and I can learn it also from other examples. Like we said, look at the examples of the people who are before us. Like we said here, consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. Those are great examples that were given, as St. Paul is saying also in Corinthians, for our admonition, given for us as examples, as we talked before. So that's the point of our contemplation. Of course, all these things are easier said than lived. And in fact, everything in our lives and every contemplation that we talk about is easier said than lived. And that's why we try to take that quiet time so that we reflect on these things and try to make a change, or ask God to make a change in our lives through his work and grace. طيب أنا مش عايز أعيد كل الكلام بالعربي لأن متهيألي الكلام كان واضح، بس أنا يعني هقول كلمتين. يعني الموضوع بتاع النهاردة عن الآية دي اتكررت النهاردة، يعني اتكررت في الأسبوع ده أكتر من مرة. يعني لو بصيتوا في الإنجيل بتاع يوم الثلاث أو بتاع يوم الأربع كانت هي الآية الأولانية دي، يعني من لوقا 12. يعني بيكلمنا عن حيث يكون كنزكم هناك يكون قلبكم أيضا. حيث يكون كنزكم هناك يكون قلبكم أيضا. وقلنا إن يعني كل دي أنواع تريجرز مختلفة الناس يعني بتجو أفتر، علشان البني آدم بيبقى بيدور على مثلا سعادة أو سلام أو شبع أو استقرار. يعني حتة الاستقرار دي إحنا كلنا بندور عليها، إن الواحد يحس إنه يقدر يبقى يعني مطمن. وساعات الواحد يحس إن الفلوس والبوزيشنز والحاجات دي هي اللي هتطمنه. بس زي ما احنا شايفين يعني ممكن حتى الايكونومي كلها تكولابس، بلاد بيحصل فيها انفليشن، وتلاقوا يعني حتى اللي بيعتمد على حاجه معينه من الحاجات دي ما بتبقاش موجوده. البني ادم ممكن يعتمد مثلا على صحته وفجاه ما تبقاش موجوده. بندور على سلام، بندور على معنى للحياه اللي احنا عايشينها. فكنا بنقول ان البني ادم وهو يعني الايه بتاعت النهارده هي حيث يكون كنزكم هناك يكون قلبكم ايضا. فاللي عايز يعرف كنزه فين يبص قلبه فين. يعني المكان اللي هيكون فيه الكنز بتاعه والحاجه اللي هو بيحبها اكتر، الحاجه اللي هو يعني بيفاليو، هي دي الحاجه اللي هيكون قلبه فيها. وعشان واحد ياخد الكنز ده، اي كنز الواحد عايز يدور عليه، وبالذات طبعا انا بتكلم عن علاقتنا بربنا، وان الواحد يأكواير المسيح، لازم الانسان يخش الى العمق. زي ما المسيح قال سمعان، قال له ادخل الى العمق. يعني ما كان بيقول له يا معلم تعبنا الليل كله ولم نصطاد شيء، قال له ادخل الى العمق. يعني هي دي، احنا ساعات كتير نحس ان احنا مش عارفين يعني نصطاد حاجه، مش عارفين حتى ناخد اي حاجه من ربنا. يعني عارفين لما يعقوب كان بيقول لربنا، بيقول له لن اتركك ما لم تباركني. مش كده؟ يعني عايز ياخد البركة وماسك في ربنا، بيصارع، يعني بيصارع مع ربنا. فدي حتة محتاجينها، الدخول إلى العمق. في فيليبي الآية دي اللي هي بالعربي بيقول أسعى لعلي أدرك، أسعى نحو الغرض. يعني رغم إن بولس كان في مستواه، يعني مستوى الروحي العالي بتاعه، بيقول أسعى، لسه هيكمل I press on، أسعى لعلي أدرك، أسعى نحو الغرض لأجعل جعالة دعوة الله العليا في المسيح يسوع. فيعني حتى بولس يعني بيقول لنا ان حتى لو انا يعني مستواي الروحي حتى لو كان كبير، فده مش معناه ان انا مش محتاج اكمل في الدخول الى العمق عشان اوصل لربنا. في الآية برضو اللي هي بتاعت أفسس بيقول يعني ان هو اصغر، بيقول لهم ان هو اصغر جميع القديسين، بس أبشر بغنى المسيح الذي لا يستقصى. غنى لا يستقصى، يعني غنى المسيح ده ملوش نهاية. فكنا يعني ادينا بعض الأمثلة، يعني انظروا إلى نهاية سيرتهم وتمثلوا بهم. وقلنا ان الانسان لما يعني بياخد ربنا از التريجر بتاعه، هيلاقي فيه كل الحاجات اللي احنا كنا بندور عليها في الكنز دي. يعني حاجه زي مثلا الاستقرار او الاستابيليتي. يعني بيقول يعني كنوز الكنز اللي احنا بنعمله ده كنز يعني لا يفنى، يعني مش هيقرب منه سارق ولا يفسده سوس، مش كده؟ فده استابيليتي، مفيش حد يقدر ياخده مننا غير الكنوز التانية بتروح. المسيح هو أمس واليوم وإلى الأبد، من يشرب من هذا الماء يعطش أيضا. موضوع العطش، وإن ربنا بيروي الإنسان اللي بيدور عليه. موضوع إن عشنا يعني موضوع معنى الحياة، إن عشنا فللرب نعيش، وإن متنا فللرب نموت، إن عشنا وإن متنا فللرب نحن. هو ده معنى الحياة زي ما قالوا في روميا. موضوع الهابينس، يعني الآية دي اللي هي في سفر الجامعة بيقول لأنه يؤتى الإنسان الصالح قدامه حكمة ومعرفة وفرح. الفرح ده بيجي من ربنا، بيجي من ان الانسان ياخد ربنا يبقى هو الكنز بتاعه. يعني هو ربنا هو اللؤلؤه كثيره الثمن اللي من اجلها التاجر يروح ويبيع كل حاجه. واحنا شفنا يعني ان الاسبوع ده كان عيد ابو نفر السائح، هو ده اللي عمله، هو راح ورا اللؤلؤه كثيره الثمن. النهارده باي ذا واي يعني برضو كل سنه وانتم طيبين، عيد ماري جرجس المزاحم. وده برضو واحد باع كل حاجه وفي الاخر استشهد، فهو لقى الكنز بتاعه. فكنا بنقول برضو ان الشخص وهو بيدور على كنز لازم هيواجه الضعفات بتاعته، لازم هينكر ذاته، لازم هيروح اجينست السلف بتاعه، الذات، لازم هيروح اجينست الشهوات بتاعته، لان الحاجات دي كلها بتجرنا للكنوز التانية. فلازم الانسان عشان يأكواير ربنا بقى ككنز، لؤلؤة كثيرة الثمن وساعات ما بتبقاش باينة. يعني ساعات الواحد يروح القداس ويحس ان هو زهقان، مش شايف الغنى اللي موجود في القداس، ومثلا مش شايف الغنى بتاع ان المسيح على المذبح وبيدي ذاته. في حكاية مريم ومارثا لازم نتعلم برضو من الحتة دي، حتة الهموم بتاعة العالم. يعني مريم المسيح قال ان هي اختارت النصيب الصالح اللي محدش هيقدر ينزعه منها. فنقطة التأمل بتاعنا ان احنا يعني نفكر انا الكنز بتاعي فين، وحتى لو انا يعني كنت بروح ورا حاجة تانية او في كنوز تانية شغلاني، فانا ممكن افكر ان الكنوز دي هتوصلني لفين. ممكن اشوف هل يعني في الايام اللي فاتت، في كل السنين اللي عشناها، هل فعلا الحاجات دي ادتني الحاجات اللي انا كنت بدور عليها ولا لا. وممكن اشوف برضو في امثله من الناس اللي حواليا، من الانجيل مثلا، من السكريبتشرز، وامثله كتير بنشوفها في الكنيسه، يعني في حياه القديسين. فهي دي نقطه التامل بتاعنا، كل واحد يشوف نفسه هو فين من موضوع الكنز ده. حيث يكون كنزكم هناك يكون قلبكم ايضا. لإلهنا المجد دائما ابديا امين. كل سنة وانتم طيبين، ويعني hope to see you all soon. Okay.
وانت طيب يا